Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Aaron Gervais on the podcast. He is the co-founder and CEO of Otherwise Brewing, which is a gluten-free beer company based in San Francisco, California. It's a really cool episode because essentially he's had a few entrepreneurial ventures early in his career, and then kind of was a W-2 marketing executive before launching Otherwise Brewing. One of the fascinating kind of components of the episode is, he wanted to find a co-founder, and so he had to go out and find his co-founder that was essentially his opposite, something more salesy and more focused on the go-to-market strategy. So really cool episode that kind of shares a little bit about his story launching Otherwise Brewing. So let's get Aaron on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. Aaron, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being a guest.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, no, well, let's jump right in. Maybe give the audience that are listening and watching to this a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Sure, I'm Aaron Gervais. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Otherwise Brewing, and we make gluten-free beer. We're one of the few. There's not a lot of brands in the gluten-free beer space. To give you some perspective, there's maybe 15 gluten-free breweries in the United States versus around 10,000 regular breweries. So the reason for that is it's very hard to make gluten-free beer that tastes good. And as I like to say, beer is not health food. People drink it for the enjoyment. So if it doesn't taste right, they're going to drink something else. So for me, the reason I got into this is a lot of people in my family are gluten-free. I was wanting to start a business. I had been a home brewer for a long time, was looking at angles within the beer industry, but wanted something a little bit more unique. And because of my family background, I knew that there were not too many options in the beer space. So decided to pursue this and see if I could make a go of it.
So you kind of had a little bit of a side hustle in the sense that you were doing some home brewing. Were you trying to do the home brewing in anticipation of hopefully going into being a full-time brewer at some point? Or was the home brewing just kind of what a lot of people do, they just like to make their own beer?
Yeah, it was just a hobby at first. I had been working in marketing in the tech industry and was just ready for a switch to do something more with physical goods. And because I had that interest in beer, I started looking around. This was like the late teens, like 2018, 2019. So craft beer was still really booming at that time. So it seemed like a really promising sector to get into. But even then, I could tell it was getting kind of crowded. I knew from my marketing background, you can't just open a business that's doing the same thing everybody else is and expect to succeed. You need to have something more unique. And gluten-free was really an underserved niche. And the more I looked into it, the more I got excited that there's a lot of potential there.
Interesting. And so are you kind of full into this? This is your full-time gig? This is not a side hustle, this is your full-time role?
It is definitely a full-time job, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, how big is Otherwise Brewing? And let's talk about some of the different flavors and just kind of where the business is. Because I'm always interested here. I heard kind of, like I was telling you in the green room, I've only had a handful of, non-tech founders on the podcast. And so it's always cool to learn and hear from founders that are not just building a SaaS platform or an app or something like that. So let's dig into Otherwise.
Sure. So I do try to talk about it in sort of startup friendly terms because we have raised capital in the past and are raising capital now. So we do have, I think, pretty good barriers to entry in the space. We have a unique value proposition, a large TAM. So all of those things apply. We have proprietary IP. Nobody brews beer exactly the same way we do. We had to do sort of our own R&D to figure out how to make gluten-free beer that tastes good. We're sort of unique in that we came to this space being, me and my co-founder, neither of us being gluten-free ourselves. So we knew what beer was supposed to taste like. Most of the other gluten-free breweries out there, they're lifestyle businesses, people who used to drink beer. They developed celiac disease. They really missed it. They decided to open up a brew pub or something like that. But as far as I know, we're the only ones who came at it to say, you know what, there's a ton of people who are gluten-free out there. Beer, it's the most popular alcoholic beverage in the world. There's a large unmet market demand here. A lot of people would like to drink beer, but they just don't know that there are options for them. They've given up on it. They go to the bar, they'll ask, what wines do you have? What ciders do you have? Not even thinking there could be gluten-free beer. So our real vision is to blow this up and make this into a mainstream category. I would love to do for gluten-free sort of the same thing that Athletic Brewing, if you're familiar with them, did for non-alcoholic beer. They were one of the first non-alcoholic brewers that really made it into a popular segment. I talked to the founder a few years ago, Bill Schufelt, and he told me when he first started his company and he was looking for investors, he'd get laughed out of the room because people were saying, well, non-alcoholic is this stagnant little niche market within beer. It's never going to grow beyond that. And he said, no, the problem is it's just nobody's ever really made a non-alcoholic beer that tastes good. And there's plenty of people who'd like to have a beer, but they don't want to, feel the effects the next day. So if we can make a delicious product, this will be a huge category. And lo and behold, it is. It's a multi-billion-dollar market now, non-alcoholic beer. So we really believe that gluten-free can do that same thing. Gluten-free, it's nearly 1 in 3 Americans avoids gluten. That's been consistent for almost 20 years now when you look at the surveys. So there's a ton of people out there who like beer and are not drinking it because they're avoiding gluten. So we would really like otherwise to be the one that makes gluten-free a staple of beer, something that everybody has in their fridge.
I love it. And there's to your point, there's a ton of people that are gluten-free. I know a lot of people that are gluten-free. I guess you mentioned that you have some IP and a proprietary way to make gluten-free beer and make it taste good or as good as a regular beer. Like what are some differences in the creation of beer and in the brewing of beer that you have to do that to make it gluten-free or to make that gluten-free beer taste better or taste good that maybe a normal brewer doesn't have to go through? Like what are some of the uniquenesses of your process without giving all away your IP essentially?
Right, right. Well, so you're starting with different raw materials. So we start with gluten-free grains. Beer is usually made with barley, which has gluten in it. Sometimes it's made with wheat or rye. Both of those also have gluten in them. So the typical brewing grains all have gluten. So we can't use any of those. So we use mostly rice. We use some millet as well. Those are the two staples, and then a handful of other ones sprinkled in there. But they're all malted, which is malting basically just means you put a seed in water and it starts to grow, and then you stop it from growing. And what that does is it activates a whole bunch of enzymes. And traditional brewers, there's happy accident of nature where the enzymes will just line up at the right temperatures and moisture contents and everything to be able to just extract what you need out of those grains when you put them in the water. That doesn't happen with other types of grain, especially the gluten-free ones. None of those enzymatic things that you need, none of them line up. So a big part of our IP was figuring out how to get all of those things to line up properly so that we can extract the right components from other types of grain. And once you do that, and I apologize, it's probably a little technical.
It's great.
Once you do that, once you extract all of that, what you basically have made is food for yeast, and the yeast go ahead and make the beer for you. So if you can give them the food they want to eat, then they're going to make the beer that you want at the end of the day. So our job is to figure out how to make that food out of different types of raw materials, and our IP is all around that. How do we manipulate the raw materials or the process to be able to get that end result to feed the yeast?
Got it. Interesting. And so you started this business at least on a handful of years ago. You said like 2018, 19, right? I guess what kind of caused you to kind of make that leap and ultimately quit your job? Obviously, you had a career in marketing, and it sounds like you had a passion around beer. But there's a lot of potential risk that goes into leaving a stable marketing job to start a brewer or start any kind of business. So I always like to kind of understand people's kind of origin stories and their mindset going from being a W-2 employee to starting a business. So like, what was the trigger point, or what was the tipping point for you to kind of make that transition?
I've always been really self-motivated. I mean, before marketing, I was working in the arts as a freelance composer, so that's very hustle focused. And It is sort of like running a business, like a consulting business, because you're sort of limited by what you can do as output as one person. I had run a couple of arts nonprofits. I tried launching a music education app for iOS that didn't really go anywhere. So I had dabbled in entrepreneurship already, and then just working the W-2, it was not as fulfilling for me. I really have that desire to be my own boss and make my own mark in the world. So that's really what motivates me. So definitely, you work a lot harder, probably a lot more lucrative to just stick with a tech job. But I don't regret it at all. I really have enjoyed the journey. It just makes the days fulfilling, and yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. And you said you have a co-founder. I guess how big is the Otherwise Brewing team at the moment?
There's about 8 of us. Yeah, so me and
And
my
are they
co-founder.
mostly, I guess, how do you and your co-founder kind of split duties? Because a lot of times, I think that's kind of fascinating. A lot of times you find a co-founder who maybe is your opposite, right? Like maybe that person's more salesy and you're more, technical or behind the scenes. Like how do you guys kind of divide and conquer?
Exactly. That's a really good point. When I was looking for somebody to work on this project with, well, I knew right away I didn't want to just do it by myself. I wanted to have a
Mm,
co-founder. Um, and that's because I had been in other ventures before where we all kind of had the same interests, and we all tried to do the same things, and there would be a bunch of important stuff not getting done because nobody wanted to do those things. So I was really looking for someone who was opposite of me. So my co-founder, Stellar, um, comes from the beer industry, mostly in sales in front of house. She's very outgoing. She loves meeting new people and doing the door-to-door sales aspect of beer that is necessary in the industry. So those are not really things that I'm particularly good at, and I'm not that passionate about it. So if I had to do all that on my own, I don't think I would have gotten nearly as far. So I focus more on the production side of things, the IP, and then now the overseeing the manufacturing, and then the finances and the marketing, of course, given my background. And then she does she does all of the sales. She handles some of our social media, and she also manages our tasting group.
How did you know? You said her name was Stellar. Is that you said her name was?
That's right. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
did you know her before you decided to start a business, or how did you go about kind of finding her and then convincing her to be a co-founder in the business?
Um, I did not know her ahead of time. I met her as I started talking to people in the beer industry,
Okay.
trying to validate this idea that I had. And it's just so happened that she was wanting to start something up as well. And her angle was being a Latina woman in beer. She wanted to open up beer to more people and have it be a, a more inclusive experience, not just the stereotypical white guys with beards. No offense, I know you're a white guy with a beard, but
To say, was that a dig at me? I've got a beard. Come on now.
but so she went. The idea of gluten free appealed to her for that reason. And it's like, okay, we're opening it up to new people that are already part of the beer community.
And it's very fascinating because I think, a lot of times when you're starting a business, co-founders almost sometimes I hear they kind of, you already know them. They kind of, you almost like stars align and you meet them at a conference or something like that. Like it sounds like you kind of almost sought her out and it's in a way, how did that first kind of conversation go around, hey, like, can we work together? Because starting a business together is like a marriage, right? You're contractually obligated. There's financial things that get intermingled. You have to work with that person on a regular basis, right? So like, how did that courtship process work? Because you obviously had the brewing and that kind of side of it, and she obviously had the sales and marketing and the passion around building a more inclusive environment. Yeah, I'm very curious how that kind of courtship process. And then once the rubber meets the road, because everybody wants to start a brewery, right? Or everybody wants to start a bar. But
Right.
then like, oh, we need finances. Oh, we need space. Oh, we need to hire people. And there's risk. And yeah, I'm just curious how that kind of conversation started and kind of evolved.
It was sort of a slow development. So I mean, we met in 2019 and we started exploring the idea, but we didn't launch our first beer to market until 2021. So
Okay.
there was a period of getting to know each other, seeing if we wanted to move forward or not. And then once we were sort of decided that we wanted to do it, we started with some of the formalities, getting a co-founders agreement in place and making sure we were both okay with the kind of commitment and risk that was involved. And then from there, we worked together on the R&D. So, I was doing all the actual test brewing and stuff like that, but then we would decide on what we wanted to test and what we wanted to work on together, and she would evaluate things with me. And so there was that whole process, and then through all of that, we started discussing our go-to-market plan and how we were going to launch and what we were going to focus on to start with and all that stuff. So we had a good period of like a year and a half of getting to know each other while the stakes were still pretty low. Neither of us had put in that much money or time or quit our jobs or anything. So it was it allowed us to get to know each other gradually.
And how do you like launch and start and expand a brewery company? Because obviously you need to create beer, right? And then you need to make sure it tastes good. And then like, how do you kind of go from this beer tastes really good to then going and convincing a bar or a restaurant or some type of distribution channel to, take a risk on you and put it in their shop or their bar and all that fun stuff. How does that kind of evolution work?
Yeah, so I mean, having a unique niche like we did, that helps a lot. We didn't find that we had too much trouble getting bars and restaurants to try us out, just because you would talk to the bartenders and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, people ask us for gluten-free stuff all the time, and your beer tastes pretty good. Let's give it a shot." And there wasn't a whole lot of competition. If there was anything, it might be like some beer nobody had heard of from the other side of the country. So they were
Yeah.
really excited to have a local option. So getting new accounts at the start was really quite easy, much more so than if we were just a traditional beer brand.
And is it really just kind of walking into a bar and saying, "Hey, can you try this beer?" Bartender or manager, we want to, do a pop up and get, create some buzz, or like how does that getting distribution or getting on their shelf kind of work?
That's the traditional way to do it. Beer
Interesting.
sales is still pretty old school. I knew that was not going to be scalable for us because we were bootstrapping it. We didn't have a lot of cash to burn, so we needed to
Yeah.
be much more efficient in terms of qualifying leads. So I did some, I guess you'd say, database marketing. You can find the list of all the licensed alcohol establishments in the state. That's a matter of public record, and then you can write some little API scripts to populate information about them and scrape what's available online and find contact information and then start reaching out to people and figuring out who's more likely to be a prospective account or not. So we did that pretty intensively, like 2022, 23, and that
Okay.
quickly helped us like triple the number of accounts we had. So yeah, we tried to find a model that was outside of the tried and true, because if you just go out and hire beer salesmen, they're going to be expecting to be in their car driving around giving out samples to people all day, and that's sort of how they make business. But as the beer market has gotten more competitive, there's been a lot of pressures, not just for gluten-free, but for any beer brand, on costs over the past 5 years or so. So that model is becoming less and less feasible for all breweries. And so us, out of necessity from the start, we were looking for more efficient ways to do sales, and it's really served us well in the long run, just having had that experience early on.
And I guess how or where is your beer? Like if I'm in you're based in San Francisco, I think you said, right?
Right, right.
Are you just geographically focused on San Francisco, or how? And if so, next time I'm in San Francisco and I want to try gluten-free beer, are you in more restaurants or are you in grocery stores? Both? Like what's your distribution like?
Yeah, we're in both. We are mostly focused in the Bay Area for now. Though it's interesting, we're talking right now because we're in the middle of negotiations with distributors to cover the rest of the state. So
Nice.
we're hoping to make a decision imminently within the next week or two on who to go with. But our strategy over the past year and a half has really been to go deep within our existing market rather than go wide, just because you save a lot of money in logistics that way. Beer is 95% water, and water is heavy to ship. So,
Mm,
it helps you a lot if you can solve that last mile locally rather than having to have all these distribution hubs all over the place. But at a certain
right.
point, you do need that to grow, and we're at that stage now. So we're starting to expand.
And what's your capacity? Like how many bottles of beer. I don't know what your measurement is on kind of creation or capacity. Like how much are you creating? How many bottles are you creating on a monthly basis? I'm just kind of curious to kind of just get a sense of scale.
Yeah, we're not huge yet. The beer industry uses a measurement called beer barrels, which is
Okay,
31 gallons.
got it.
So I think we are making somewhere in the range of like 80 to 100 barrels a month in beer,
Wow.
and selling about that same amount. So what is that? It's like 31 3,000 gallons or so of beer a
Yeah.
month. Hmm.
That sounds like a lot of beer. And how many like flavors or variations do you have? Like I was looking at your LinkedIn like kind of headshot, and there's a handful of different options or flavors. Like what's your flavor mix?
Yeah, we've got 4 flagships that are always on the market, and then we have seasonals that come out from time to time. So we have Cow Roast Crisp, which is a traditional style lager brewed with
Okay.
rice, and then we have Cow Roast is a type of rice, hence the name.
Okay.
And then we have Western Edition, which is a West Coast style pale ale, sort of like Sierra Nevada. And then we've got um, a rotating IPA series. So IPA drinkers tend to like novelty, so we change up the recipe on that one on a quarterly basis, but it is under the same UPC. And then we have a guava sour, which started out as a special release, but it was so popular we decided to make it a year-round offering.
Interesting. And I guess as you think about kind of growth and expansion, is your growth strategy over the next, call it 6 to 12 months, is it really focused on just getting more distribution and increasing your beer barrels per month output, or is it expanding into new flavors and trying to testing new products out?
It's going to be about the distribution for us over the short term.
Yeah.
Yeah, try to keep the product mix tight, not overextend ourselves. Every time you add a product, you also have to store it, and you have to pay for ingredients, and you have costs, you have cash tied up in inventory until it gets sold. So with most CPG businesses, the traditional advice is keep your roster products as small as possible and grow by expanding your customer base in your market size. So we did actually used to have more beers out there at once, but we pared it back just to focus on the ones that were really the top movers.
Are you able to ship? Like, do you sell anything direct to consumer, or is it all kind of through your local kind of restaurants and grocery and all of that stuff? Like, if I'm in Austin, Texas, so can I order it online, or is that not feasible, possible at this moment?
Yeah, you can. We do ship nationally
Oh, cool.
through our website. It's a little bit tricky with the way the alcohol rules work, but so you
Yeah.
have to use an alcohol specific e-commerce provider, but we have
Hmm.
that set up so we can ship here to Austin, and there's a handful of states that don't allow it, but I think it's like 45 states we can ship to.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to let a few of my gluten-free friends know that there's an option out there for them if they want to test
Yeah,
something out.
for sure.
It sounds like you've had this entrepreneurial bug for a while, right? It sounds like you've done some nonprofit kind of entrepreneurial stuff. You try to launch
Hmm.
an app. I guess and then obviously now you've launched this brewery it's brewery, and things seem to be going well. From all these different experiences, like what did you take from the other experiences that were very different than launching a brewery to maybe make you feel more comfortable launching this business? Because it's a way different thing than building an app.
Hmm.
I'm just kind of curious if there's any parallels or things that you learned that maybe helped you advance faster in this whole process.
Sure, yeah. From working in the arts, I was really craving to have something that was scalable. Um, the arts is so much, like as I mentioned before, it's kind of like being a consultant. Like you're
Hmm.
limited by how much you personally can produce. So I wanted something where I could add staff to produce more or add equipment to produce more. So that was really important to me. I didn't want to be in another venture that was really in that sort of consultatory capacity, because almost everything I had done before had been like that. And then I guess from the app experience, it was really the realization that having a good product is not enough. That's
Mm.
that's part of the battle, but it's really only a small part of the battle. Like once you have a good product, that's when the real work begins in terms of like brand awareness and getting people to try it and managing those customer relationships and all that stuff. And I had sort of expected a little bit more organic traction to come from the app, just because I knew that the pedagogy behind it was good and that people who wanted to use that app to learn their instruments would have success doing it. But that was not enough. And when I realized that I would have to have a marketing budget and be traveling to music educator conferences and making that sort of like a full-time job, I didn't have the interest in continuing with that. So I decided not to continue growing it. So yeah, coming to beer, I knew I really enjoyed brewing and I enjoyed beer. It was scalable. It felt like there was a lot of demand for it, and that I'd found kind of a unique niche, and I could see myself putting in the hours to do the hard work that it would take to make it grow. So all of those previous experiences sort of informed that decision for sure.
That's interesting, and I'm curious. As you were talking there, I kind of was like, brewing and anything that you create that is kind of that you taste. You have a different taste palette than I do, like everybody else does. How hard is it to brew a beer, and maybe it's right early on in the journey, you brew a beer that you think tastes really, really good, and then you take it to a market and they're like, nah, not it. And then conversely, if you like, hey, the beer is good, it's okay, but then everybody loves it. Like, have you had to kind of, I guess, trust your gut to either go with one that you think is just, hey, I trust that I know what my taste palette's the right one, or how do you kind of adjust which ones you launch? Because you said the sour was something that was kind of a seasonal thing or a test, and now it's so popular that it's part of your flagship 4 products. Like, I'm just curious kind of how you balance that.
That's a really great question, and you see approaches that go in both ways in the beer industry. Definitely, you do need to have a good palate and know what you're tasting. Make sure there are no defects and you're actually brewing the type of beer that you say that you're brewing. Because if someone is expecting to drink something that tastes like, I don't know, like Modelo, and you give them something that tastes like a Stone IPA, they're not going to be happy, right? Like you need to be in the right flavor world. But then when it gets down to those nuances of like, okay, it's a quality made product. After that, it becomes very subjective, and you just have to kind of look at the sales numbers. Another thing we look at in the tasting room is we look at which beers come back with the glass empty or not empty. So if we see, people have different tastes, of course, but if we consistently we see a particular beer is coming back without people finishing it, then we're like, okay, maybe that recipe needs some more work. So yeah, we definitely are driven by factors outside of our own personal judgment. But then within the brewing industry, you'll find a lot of boutique niche little microbreweries that are not really trying to expand on a commercial level. They just kind of want to be able to keep the doors open, and they've got sort of brewer run by somebody who has very strong opinions about what beer should and shouldn't be, and then they'll have a very unique interpretation on the style, and they sort of find their niche following, and those are the people who go there. But I think as a general practice, that's much harder to pull off than to sort of be a little bit more humble about it, and just realize that because I like something doesn't necessarily mean everyone else is going to like that, and sort of look at people's experiences and try to make the beer that they want to drink on aggregate.
Yeah, it's kind of do I want to create this as a lifestyle business, or do I want to create this as like a scalable business? And sometimes, the lifestyle is your taste palette. I like this beer, so I'm going to brew it. And the other could be, hey, I'm going to trust the sales numbers because I'm trying to grow this to be the next athletic, essentially the athletic brewing of the gluten-free, beer sector. I think that's interesting. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people I have on here are tech folks, and so we talk a lot about AI and how AI is disrupting or helping and all that fun stuff. Is there any AI ability for you to work in that space or have that as part of your evaluative process to leverage AI around anything around other than just maybe some marketing collateral and things like that? Like, is there any brewing AI that you've found or have used to make your decision making process easier, faster, et cetera?
A little bit, nothing that's like totally core at this point. Obviously, we do use a lot of marketing AI tools. Those are very helpful, and to whatever extent in CRMs and stuff like that, there's AI tools. We're in talks with another startup right now who's doing inventory management for CPG businesses using AI models. So they may be building out something for us to help us with inventory planning. As we grow, it's getting more and more challenging just to forecast accurately with the seasonality and then the natural ebbs and flows. And we always want to be in a position where we have the beer in stock that people want to buy. And we've had a couple of situations over the past year where demand just really took off suddenly, and then the lead time to get more brewed was more than was a little bit longer, so we were out of stock for a week or two. So those kinds of things I want to avoid, and AI definitely has a role to play in helping to build out those models.
Interesting. And I guess if somebody's listening to this and they maybe they're a home brewer and they've always wanted to, launch a brewery or whatever the case is, like what are some like maybe useful tips or tricks or things that you learned through your, multi-year journey doing this, to maybe help that person listening to this to maybe avoid some of the potholes that you fell in and I had to jump out of. I'm just curious if there's any things that you would wish you knew before or when you were starting that you know now.
A couple of things. I mean, one of them is be really clear about why the world needs your product. If the reason for starting a brewery is because I make the best IPA or I make the best like wild fermented sour, that's not really a reason, because everyone thinks their beer is the best. So you need to be able to articulate what's really unique about your offering in a way that's going to make sense to people that are not just beer nerds, but to people who are just asking, oh, what is this business that you're starting, that you can sort of, if you can explain to them in layman's terms why the world needs your product, then you're off to a good start. And then the second thing, kind of counterintuitively to that, is you have to have a good product, but don't obsess about making it perfect. There's going to be an MVP, a minimum viable product, and that's true in beer or in any kind of food and beverage business. The good thing about a consumable like beer is that even if the first couple batches you put out are like to your standards a B minus, you'll sell through them and you'll get to keep raising the bar and eventually be putting out A pluses all the time. But that may not be the most important thing to your success in the early stages. If the A plus is going to cost you the ability to have workable margins in the early stages, then you're going to have to just sort of settle with the B minus, knowing that you can do something better. And then as you grow, as you get scale, as you get better efficiencies, then you can continue to improve and innovate and really take that to the next level. But you need to be willing to make those sacrifices in the early days. Now, this is never to say that you should put out a bad product. You have to put out a good product. Your product has to be good. But there are these shades of nuance that the typical consumer is not going to notice. And great if you can get that from the start, but don't be a perfectionist about it either. Figure out what your MVP is and then go prove it out on the market.
Love it. As we wind down here, I guess, we're recording this early October 2025. If we jumped on a podcast a year from now, what's like one or two things that you are trying to achieve in the next 12 months that, you'd be excited to come back and share?
Yeah, we really want to expand that distribution. We want to break out of our home market. I think our reasons for staying local were good ones. They were based in sound business fundamentals, but right now our next real challenge is growth, territorial growth, adding new markets for our products. So I would hope to be in a lot more markets than we are now.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I appreciate your time. Let's end the episode like I do all episodes with a 3-pack of questions. First question here: what is an influential book or podcast that you would recommend to the audience?
The book I usually give when I get this question is Debt: The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. I don't know if you know David Graeber, but he sadly passed away during COVID, not from COVID, from something else.
Okay, but I don't know this book.
He's an anthropologist and an economist, and he has written a lot about the history of finance, like where these concepts came from, how they evolved in society, how they changed over time. And it totally changed my thinking. Like I'd always had this traditional thought of like first there was barter, and then people had like gold coins, and then after that they would got paper money, and then now we have credit. It was not, but it's not like that. He showed that actually debt came before money, and that there was really good reasons for this structure to evolve in certain societies and not in others. And it's just a fascinating read from cover to cover.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, like I love when I get books that are not the norm, because I get a lot of the same books. So I'll have to check that one out. Favorite thing to do outside of work, other than go have a nice beer somewhere, I guess, because that is your job.
Yes. I really love to cook. That may be why I
Okay.
got into brewing in the first place. So yeah, I will make fancy meals for me and my wife, or we'll throw dinner parties. That's kind of my favorite fun thing to do.
Are you always, as you're cooking, are you always trying to pair the meal with with one of your beers, or is that just kind of a secondary kind of thing?
Um, no, I'm not usually designing the menus to pair with a specific beer or wine or anything like that. It's more for the sake of the food, but then we do find a pairing that works in the end.
Got it. Awesome. Favorite vacation spot to round things off?
I really love Korea. My wife is of Korean descent, and we've been
Okay.
to many places all around South Korea, and I always have a fantastic time. The food's delicious. There's lots of fun things to do. So yeah, South Korea.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Aaron, this has been awesome. If people want to reach out, learn more about your brewery and or about you, or find out where they can buy it, what's the best way to connect with you?
They can go to otherwisebrewing.com and send us a message there, and I'll get back to them.
Awesome. We will put all that in the show notes. Aaron, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your story.
Thanks, Justin. It's been great.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.